Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to take a few moments as attendees uh, join the room. We appreciate you taking some time out of this Veterans Day evening to honor the stories and experiences of veterans with us. So we're just going to wait a few more moments as folks enter the room to actually begin the content of the presentation. However, I will go over just some administrative items before you begin. My name is Amelia. I'm a staff member at the New York State chapter of NASW. I want to welcome you to tonight's presentation with a panel of Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative committee members on the exploration of coming home for Veterans Day. We want to honor Veterans Day today as a collective, as well as uplift and honor the individual stories of veterans, particularly those who are in our presence tonight. We thank you for joining us and taking some time to increase your cultural humility and honor those who have served our nation. I want to remind you that this program does not include CE credit. This is a program for information, for cultural humility, and to take a moment out of your day to honor veterans across New York State. I'm going to go over a few ways that we're going to be able to engage with one another. We ask that we have everyone in attendee mode, so you will be automatically on mute, so you don't have to worry about your background noise. We are able to communicate via chat. If anyone would like to let us know where you're coming from, maybe let us know why you're here. Maybe if you are a veteran yourself, we'd love to hear from you as well. You can also ask questions in the Q&A box that's available in your taskbar. We will make a recording of this webinar available. Thank you, Jean, for asking that question. It will be available on our Voices of Veterans playlist that is on YouTube. So thank you for that, Jean. I also want to mention that this will be a panel. All of our panelists will be discussing their lived experiences. There will be a time. If you want to ask questions, we encourage you to ask those through the Q&A. Beyond that, I'm also going to mention that we are turning on our live transcript, which is going to pop up on the bottom of your screen. If the closed caption is in your way, you can drag and drop that anywhere on the screen that you'd like to put it. If it's in front of someone's face, you can move it. You can also click the caret and put hide transcript so you don't see this closed captioning, or view full transcript, and it'll pop up on the right-hand side of your screen. Before we begin, we have a special treat for you tonight. One of our committee members, Brent Russell, in addition to being a talented clinician, being a veteran, he is also a gifted singer and musician, and he'll be opening our session tonight with the National Anthem. So thank you, Brent.
Thank you for the honor. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we held at the twilight laugh gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, all the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in there, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave. Oh, the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you.
Brent, no words. Thank you so much. I think you just set the tone for the evening. My name's Sam Fletcher, and I am the Executive Director of the National Association of Social Workers, New York State chapter, and I have the distinct honor of facilitating our conversation this evening. I am not going to thank everyone for their service because I know we have people on our panel who don't like that. So what I will say is that I'm indebted to you, and I have that most respect for you. And I thank you for allowing me to be in this space with you and to facilitate the conversation. And without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. We have a lot of panelists tonight. I want to make sure that we get to hear everyone. So I am going to start with Sharon. And our first question, I am going to ask you to introduce yourself to everyone, let them know about your military history. And then I'm going to have you answer the question, how were you impacted when you came home or separated from the military?
Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for coming out to hear our stories. And we know that it's not because we're special, but because we just got loud mouths. So I came into the military as a Army medic, and I stayed in the Army for 3 years, and I got out, and then I went into the Air Force Reserves as a flight medic. And while I was in the reserves, I went and got my degree in social work, and then I went into the Air Force. The reason why I went into the Air Force because when I was in the Army, I saw that if I wanted to be a PA or I wanted to stay in the medical field, they would have gave me a lot of experiences. So I figured if I go into the Air Force as a social worker, I would get those kinds of experiences as well. And I truly got a lot of experiences in my 17 years in the Air Force. So I retired in 2007. And from there, I just went into private practice in San Antonio. So in a way, I got out a couple of times in the military. The first time, in the Army, I didn't go to the VA. I felt like that was my father's and uncle's VA. And so I didn't have medical insurance while I was going to school. But that's just, the way I thought at the time. And, I felt like I lost a lot when I got out, and I didn't know what it was. And not until recently, I recognized that because I started seeing it in other veterans that had gotten out recently. So I was like, oh, okay, that's something that we all go through when we lose our tribe, when we lose that mission, that thing that we were doing for so long. And so it's been 30 years since I've been away from New York. And when I came back, that was like my really coming home, and dealing with just all kinds of stuff. And I think I was better working by myself than trying to work with others. So I had problems working with others. I don't know if anybody else saw that as a service member, but we can get pretty headstrong and doing things for a long time. So that was my coming back home. It was 30 years. And actually a civilian, when she heard me say that, she turned around to me and she said, "Welcome home, Sharon." And I have to tell you, it was eye-opening that meant a lot to me. And I wasn't, deployed. I wasn't anything, but being back home was a lot different than being in a military town, because San Antonio is military in and out, from Air Force to Army. So that's, a little bit about where I've come from.
Thank you, Sharon. That's powerful. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brent. So Brent, if you'll tell everyone a little bit about yourself and then how you were impacted when you came home or separated from the military.
So my name is Brent Russell, and I work at the Mental Health Association of Nassau County as the director of Peer and Veteran Services. And I am an Army veteran. And I find myself being invigorated when I work alongside other military veterans. You know, I'm, like I said, I'm Army, but it's good for me, right? And it's good for me to work alongside my co-military brothers and sisters, because something was birthed in me when I went into the military, and it was that camaraderie. It was being a part of the team. When I initially went into the military, I went in to get away from my family. I went in to get away from my neighborhood, and I went in to satisfy this need to feel good about myself and to feel good about what I was doing. And I went in and I did good for a while. I connected with my team. I connected with my drill sergeants. I connected with my buddies, and became a part of this team. And I moved on through basic training, and I moved on to advanced individual training. And I ended up hurting myself. And when I hurt myself, I was devastated because I wasn't able to perform like I thought I was going to be able to. When we happened to be in the midst of a war which had just started. I was in advanced individual training, and Bush Senior ordered that airstrike, and you know, and my whole battalion went over. My whole battalion deployed, but I could not go. So I ended up having surgery. I ended up being in the medical hold unit. My morale was done. I was on the medical hold unit for, I don't know, some months. It felt like years. And so when I came home, I was devastated. I was lost. And, you know, I want you to know that before I went in, I was traumatized. I had already gone through some trauma, you know, and when I came home, I had some more trauma, right? From what I had gone through, and there were a lot of different feelings. And so when I came home, I didn't know what to do with myself. And honestly, I flopped around for some time, trying to figure out what it is that Brent wanted to do. And thank God for family that was there to support me and to help direct me, even though I was a little bit resistant, and because I was back in that situation I was trying to get away from. And finally, eventually, thank God, I found my footing.
Thank you, Brent. I've heard your story so many times, and I always learn something new every time you tell it. And I think it's such a powerful perspective of having the expectations to go in and do certain things and then getting injured, and like what you do with that when that happens. So thank you as always for that. And now Mike Shermatz. So I'm going to have you introduce yourself and then talk about how you were impacted when you came home.
Thanks, Sam. Thank you, everybody that's in attendance tonight. My name is Mike Shermatz. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, also a member of the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative committee. And my experience separating from the military was, to put it plainly, terrible. I literally, there was a lot behind my discharge, resulting from some significant betrayal that occurred on the part of my leadership. And, you know, and ending in me essentially resigning my commission because I no longer wanted to be a part of the organization any longer, because I was so jaded based on how I had been treated, manipulated, and basically information withheld in an effort to coerce me into basically walking away. So I cleared I had my vehicle packed up, and usually in the military, what they do, at least in the Army, is there's a hail and farewell. And what that does is it welcomes new people in, and it provides well wishes and thank you for what you've done for us and this unit as if you're moving on, right? There was no hail and farewell. There was don't let the door hit you on the ass as you leave. One day I was there, one day I was gone, literally. And I had my middle finger up to my rear view mirror as I was driving down 81 from Watertown to come back to Buffalo. And I didn't want to think about or associate with anything that had even a thread of connection to the military for a year and a half upon coming home, because I was so upset and angry and spiteful and bitter. And well, in that time, that probably served me in some way. I don't want to say I quickly found out, but I started to see how that was actually negatively impacting me in my life. This part of my life that was significant to me, I bought into the military, the idea of the military, the idea of the Army, the values of the Army, and to have all that stuff kind of, not just taken away from me, but essentially like negated. Like, this is not what I was told it was going to be. This is not how people I thought were going to act and treat other people. And it took me a long time to reconcile that. I did finally engage in some mental health counseling outside of the VA. It took me about 2.5 years to go back to the VA when I got out, because I didn't want to be there. And through reaching out for help initially, I was finally able to go back to the VA. And when I went back to the VA, I was able to reconnect with people and form some relationships that were based in trust and not in betrayal. And long story short, through my process of reconnecting, it led me to get involved with veteran peer support, which led me to go back to get my master's degree in social work, which then led me to become a counselor at the VA, helping veterans that are very likely struggling with situations similar to what maybe I went through, obviously unique, and maybe similar to what other people that have shared, like we've heard from Brent and Sharon. Everybody comes out having their own experience, and it's not always pomp and circumstance and a hero's welcome home. Very often quite the opposite of that. And so, like, I'm honored that I was able to turn things around, and I'm now able to continue to serve my fellow veterans. So thanks, Sam.
Thank you, Mike. It's always powerful hearing your story. And I love how each story has been different so far. And like each story kind of ends with this resilience and this like coming full circle, which is so powerful. I keep saying that after everyone, but it's true. Benicia, you are next to introduce yourself and to let us know how you were impacted when you left the military.
So my name is Benicia DeRoos. I am a Navy veteran, and my reason for joining the military was to pursue school education. I started going to school, and then it became very expensive. And so I didn't want to end up with student loans, and I had heard from some of my family members about the military. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. Nobody in my family had really served, so I kind of found out on my own. Joining the military, I chose a job that was challenging. So I was a mechanic in the military. I served 7 years, and how I was impacted when I got out. So I lived in downstate New York. I met my then husband, my then boyfriend at the time, and he was from upstate New York. So I had known nothing about upstate New York. So we decided to move here. not really knowing anybody. So we decided to stay at one of his friend's house. So for me, it was more of the community, integrating back into that in a community that I was unfamiliar with. I was the only Black person in any situation that I've been in. So it was a matter of, are they going to judge me? Am I going to be stereotyped? Am I going to be accepted? I'm also a veteran, so there aren't any shared connections there. Who am I going to trust? I've left a unit, a division of people who were very similar to me, who I've learned to trust and love. And here I am in an environment that I know nothing of. So for me, it was more of an internal struggle of trying to connect with people who I didn't feel that I had any kind of connection with. But in all of that, I realized, and I also was able to, connecting with resources was not an issue for me. My husband had transitioned 3 or 4 months before me, so I kind of knew the process, and I did a lot of research in regards to that. So connecting with resources was not an issue. It was more of connecting with others and whether or not I can trust them. So initially, I started isolating myself, and that was my way of coping at that time. Also, my husband, very similar, and we both isolated ourselves. So although it was supportive, it wasn't a very healthy, supportive relationship. So we started going out a little bit more, and then we were starting to connect with individuals, trying to connect with people. And then I allowed myself to trust individuals, and now we have some flourishing friendships. But initially, it was more of being able to trust people. It's very hard, and even till today, it's still a challenge for me to be able to trust people. And that relationship that we had when we were in the service, of that camaraderie and that mission, and not having that anymore, is totally a struggle for me.
Almost like a double loss, the loss of the military and then the loss of the community that you knew.
Absolutely.
Going back, and then the peer support with your husband,
Yeah,
to get you to that point.
absolutely.
Thank you, Venetia.
You're welcome.
Carl, you are next. Let us know who you are and then how you were impacted when you came home.
My name is Carl Rody. I'm the Director of Veteran Services of Putnam County. I'm also a Veteran Service Officer. I joined the Army so I wouldn't have to go into infantry and I wouldn't have to go to Vietnam. That didn't work out very well. I went to Vietnam and it was in infantry. So my reasons for joining didn't work. Most of the Vietnam veterans that you're going to talk to, we're like the poster boys for being treated poorly when we got out of the service. My feelings getting out, I really can't even think about that, because that wasn't what was important, whether I wanted to leave the Army or how I was treated in the Army. That never crossed my mind. We were told when we got to, I got out of the Army at, I got back from Vietnam in Fort Lewis. We were told to go to the SeaTac airport, get our airplane tickets, and then take our uniforms off so nobody would be able to identify us as veterans. That was a kind of a rude awakening. I did have several times I had where I was called a baby killer or something else invective was hurled at us. I got to be honest, nobody spit at me. If they had, it probably would have been the last time they spit at anybody. So I didn't have that experience, but I went close to 20 years before anybody but my family and immediate friends knew I was a veteran. I told nobody. It wasn't that I wasn't proud of it. Every time you saw a newspaper article about somebody committing a crime, or every movie, every television show, there was crazed Vietnam veterans, and I didn't want to be tagged as a crazed Vietnam veteran. So the best way to do that was to hide from it. It was when I was almost 30 years before I went back to the VA. I got involved in veterans issues, but I didn't go near the VA for almost 30 years. I think my working with veterans and doing things with veterans is what's been cathartic for me, has helped me get through and be mostly sane. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still working on that. So we'll see. But yeah, it wasn't nice coming home back in 1969. So that's about all I have.
And I think, Carl, that you tell a story that we hear very often from Vietnam veterans. And, you know, a lot of Vietnam veterans not getting any sort of support until decades after their service. So I'm really glad you're here tonight to represent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Alyssa, if you can introduce yourself and let people know how you were impacted when you came home.
Hello, everybody. My name is Alyssa Gibbons. I'm a clinical social worker at United States Navy, and I was a medical service corps officer. So the credentials behind my name, where it says MSc, is just medical service corps. The Navy has active duty social workers. Yes, we do. And so that is, I was on the dark side, as the enlisted community will call an officer. And I joined, it's an interesting story. I mean, I came home from work one night and was going through the mail, and there was a recruitment flyer or pamphlet or some such thing from our local recruiter. We were back in North Carolina, where I had gotten my master's in social work. And I wasn't very happy where I was working. Just me and my husband, and coming from a military family. This was in March of 2009. I should preface that with when that was. Knowing exactly what being in the military would mean, moving, and just like lots of things. And we were trying to form, you know, roots where we had relocated and all of that. And I knew that. But my husband also knew that I wanted to be in leadership, that I wanted to be helping people in other ways, and that I had professional goals, career goals that the Navy could help me get. And I had tossed it around in my head for years before, when I was in grad school, and going back and forth with, do I do this, do I not? Interestingly enough, the Navy wasn't even on my radar at the time. It was the Air Force. And then life just got a little complicated when I left grad school, and it just didn't happen. And so I thought my chance had passed. And so I agreed to call the recruiter, and I did. I made an appointment, and I came out 45 minutes later with the process started. 6 months later, because I had my C at LCSW, I had all my paperwork, passed all the physicals. I raised my right hand, and that's it. I was in. And from there, it was a 6-year ride that was interesting and fun, and gave me all of the things that I had been looking for. During my time, I deployed for almost a year, 11 and a half months. And when I came home, from that, so I was what was called an individual augmentee, meaning that I left where I was stationed and went to where I was supposed to go. I didn't go with a unit. I didn't train with a unit. I didn't do any of that. I went to a location to do a job, a mission. And it was an awesome mission. It was very far from my family, and that was hard. My son was 2.5 at the time. And that's really hard, to be able to prepare a 2.5-year-old, because you can't prepare mommy's here, you bring mommy to the airport, and then mommy goes away. And so for about 10 months of my deployment, when I would Skype, he wouldn't talk to me. And I get it. I mean, from a clinical developmental perspective, I get it. And we'll get into some of that stuff later. But anyway, so when I came home from my deployment, I distinctly remember there being flags in my neighborhood for the social worker who I worked with, or was assigned at our same command. And she was excited, and there were welcome home signs and all of that. And I distinctly remember feeling like I don't want any of that attention. I just want to slide back into my house. I just want to reconnect with my family. I don't want any of that acknowledgement. I'm home, I'm safe, I'm alive. And I wasn't anywhere horribly scary. I mean, it was intense for different reasons, but when I left the Navy a couple of years later, actually, I think close to 18 months later, I was what is known as a failure to select, which is a fun term in officer country, meaning that you can do everything in the world right and then some and still not be selected for promotion. And my community leader at the time had no rhyme or reason as to why I wasn't. Nobody could explain it. It happens to hundreds of people every single year. And so I knew that. We had also expanded our community incredibly. And from the time I joined until that point, and the extra fun part is when I got out, the IRR, the Individual Ready Reserve, had their promotion cycle literally 4 months after I separated, and they promoted me. So, which they do. I mean, so, and any social worker who had dropped papers to get out on their own, or had been separate, or had been in the same category as myself, they were almost always selected for the next promotion grade. And so that was a bitter piece to swallow. And so kind of like Shermatz in this way, you know, I left not with the greatest taste in my mouth, because it was not how I wanted my career to go. The reality was it was a very difficult deployment. You know, I mean, it was very hard to read, you know, it was just hard on my family. And it was, I've come to a place now where there's a lot of silver linings that have been in there. And there's that. My first year out was very difficult in that I missed my uniform, even though I left not with the greatest taste in my mouth. Like, I missed my uniform. I missed what it means. I missed the camaraderie. I missed that absolute unequivocal knowledge that every single person who wore what I wore had my back every single step of the way. And I didn't have to know them. They didn't have to know me. We didn't have to like each other at all, but it didn't matter, because when the chips were down, I got you. And that's it. Like that. Yes, Shermatz, I'm watching the comments. Sorry. So I'm trying not to get distracted, because that happens way too easy in my brain. But I missed it. And it's taken me a lot of years to find that tribe again, and this group of people that you see right in front of you is my tribe, in every single stinking way. And I've not served actively with any of them, and I don't have to, because we get each other, and there's that. But there's just a lot. I was lucky in a lot of ways in that when I went into the Navy, I came in with a career with a clinical knowledge, and I was very lucky to be able to take that experience and roll that into what I do currently. I work at the VA where I get my care, and it's a fabulous facility. We do good work, we do great things. And so I was lucky to have that. I think in some ways, if I didn't have that and was trying to figure out what I want to be when I grow up, which, Carl, I'm still trying to figure that out too. So you are so not alone. Like, I don't know. I don't know, but social work is truly my saving grace. And all the skills that we have there, my saving grace. And this group of people, yeah. So I'm going to be quiet now, because I know there's lots more to get through. So thank you, Sam.
You did great, Alyssa. And I think you did a really good job of describing military culture for the civilians in the audience. Like when you talked about how you miss being in the uniform, and you know every person has your back, even if you hate them. And I think that's such a key part of military culture, that like I remember the first time I heard that, and I was like, okay, this is a culture, because that's not like That's not really how we work like in our society. So I think you did a good job of explaining that.
Thank you.
And Varmette, I'm going to have you introduce yourself and let us know how you were impacted when you came home.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for everybody's support in this. I'm the token Marine on the board. I was a lieutenant colonel, infantry officer, and I retired after 24 years, and I came back home, which is up here to up in the Adirondacks. One of the things that impacted me, and this is going back to actually a comment that Sam actually said about, I do not like it, or I didn't like it. And I couldn't figure out why I couldn't like it when somebody thanked me for my service. And it took me a lot of soul searching to figure out why. One of the reasons why is because I don't want other questions asked when I acknowledge you're welcome, because sometimes the questions get into the personal stuff. And with the personal stuff, there's things that I have that I don't want to share with anybody else, because there are moments of joy, moments of sadness that are my own makeup, my own ownership of my emotions. I mean, I served with some of the best people, and it was all services. There's even the civilian service that was over in other countries. And I really, to this day, I was just emailing a friend of mine who was a civilian service, and he just moved from Virginia to South Carolina. So that was my biggest impact, because the culture, what I started recognizing, the 24 years I didn't have an issue, because every time I came back to the base and the support system. But once you leave that base, then all of a sudden you realize you're not in that same culture. And for a lot of the reasons that everybody was talking about, I kind of more or less what we call a cocoon. I kept to myself. I wanted, minimal exposure to people. I didn't want to be around people in what I would call, forgive the expression, stupid questions, even though there's no such thing as a stupid question. We all know that. But some of those questions they wouldn't have done anything. I just wouldn't answer them. And I just find that against my principle of trying not to be transparent. So if you avoid the situation, you don't have to talk about what it was like, because throughout my career, I was in places that you do not want to know what it was like. It is nothing like America. I mean, even when people say, oh, it's like, going to somewhere in the Bahamas or something, that's not true. The world is totally different than it is over here. And I'm with 18-year-olds, and I've always been responsible for a number of lives. And I always felt, how do I explain to a parent that I just got their child killed or injured or things of that nature? So that was always on my back. And you command by yourself, because you cannot break that good order and discipline. So a lot of that coming out of the service, really, really impacted the way I would interact with people most of the time. And it wasn't sad, and I don't want anybody to feel sorry for me. There's nothing about it. What it is you have to then start learning to trust again. And that's what I find most of the vets that I deal with, because I deal in the North Country in the Adirondacks with a lot of vets that we try to get a lot of the services for and a lot of help for through the VFW and our Veterans Plus group. And in doing that, we end up, having a cup of coffee to actually just sometimes sitting there listening to the vet, and him knowing that he's talking to another vet, and just, being able to relax and realize there are people out there. And, oh, by the way, we're always available. I hate the comments where people tell you got to move on. I mean, these stupid comments. It's like, it's not good. And that's what I would hear when I first got out, because I would sit and ponder, geez, what if I did this? Or I feel sad today. I feel sad on 9/11 a lot of days, and haven't been in close proximity. So I reflect a lot, and people tell me, just get over it. And it's like, you can't get over it, because that is my social makeup that leads me forward. It's like, I have to learn how to cope with it. I have to learn how to manage it, and I have to learn to understand it. And it's like anything anybody has to do. That's where the biggest impact I have. Going back to Alyssa, it's been awesome being with this group. I did my intern at the Albany VA, and of course, I joke with Alyssa and everything else, plus all the other, not interns, but all the other social workers. So, and that's probably one of the biggest things right now is like, how does a Marine become a social worker? I still haven't figured out the answer to that question, except I care for people, and I care for veterans, and I care for the aged. So I will end on that note.
That's great as always, Mike. And I like how your story tied a lot with Venetia's, with the trust, and like talking about why you have a hard time trusting when you come home. Like, you don't want to answer these questions. So I think that was really powerful. There's that word again. It's always powerful with you all. And Ward, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about how you were impacted when you came home?
Thank you, Sam. I appreciate that. Can you hear me okay? Kind of a bad connection. Nice. I'm still also wondering how a Marine got to do anything. So I'm just always impressed. That's good. It's a good outcome. I actually joined the Army in 2000 as a commissioned officer. And then I was deployed to Afghanistan from 2004, 5, and 6 with the 25th Infantry Division, also MSC, so Medical Service Corps. So the company commander role was largely as needed. And it was right after Abu Ghraib. And if you remember that, the situation with the detainees and such, and the embarrassment in Iraq. So I guess the intent was to put social workers like us in these positions where we could prevent it from happening again. So it was a really fascinating mission. And honestly, for the most part, my experience was pretty positive. I came out of it stronger, I think, than when I came into it. And I came home. I'll never forget, we flew back into, because as a unit, a 1-year deployment, and we flew back to Bangor, Maine. And we had heard stories about they had some get together, and we came around a corner, off the airplane. Nobody was there. So it was kind of relief, but another corner, there was this huge line of veterans. This was 2006, and people just welcoming us home. It was pretty amazing. And I think a lot about Vietnam vets and what a terrible deal they had. While I was able to do stand-up comedy in Bagram, Afghanistan, I mean, apparently anyone can. You can start it out with, so anyone here from out of town, and it just sort of goes downhill as it turns out. But, the thinking is, war, awful and terrible as has been throughout history, is getting better. It's getting easier in a lot of ways. The technology has come so far, and I was able to email home and stay connected to family that I really missed, and so on. So it made it easier when bad stuff happened, like we got hit by rockets and I got blown into a building and stuff like that. But in the end, I think I took personally the experience of coming home as mostly positive. And other than the fact that a couple of years later, some teenagers were on my property and I got in a little bit of trouble and so on. Other than that, things were really good. And kind of the leadership and the experience you can translate into a career pretty well. So organizing complex entrepreneurial interests and moving forward with a bunch of employees and starting companies. These are things that veterans do on a much higher level proportionally than the regular population. We're not all damaged goods, and I'm always trying to leave that point and leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Ward. And I think that's a really important point that you ended with, because I know I've worked with veterans for a long time, and I can attest you're not all damaged goods. In fact, I always talk about the skill set you have. And I mean, you guys can't get rid of me. I like working with you because you're very, you work with a veteran. If a veteran tells you they're going to do something, they do it, and they do it well. And I always love working with you. So I love the fact that you talk about that and that you brought that up, because it's so true. Like, such a skill set that you come out of the military with. And last but not least, for our last question, Tony, do you want to introduce yourself and let people know how you were impacted when you came home or separated from the military? And you're muted, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
There we go. Okay. My name is Tony Roboska. I'm a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel. I served from 1966 to 1986. I'm the son of an Italian immigrant who certainly served during World War II, along with his brothers and my other uncles. And I have a real sense of duty, honor, service that basically was instilled for me from my uncles, who are now all gone. I don't know if you can see from behind me, but that's my dad's flag behind me. I always keep that real close wherever we've traveled over the years. My career was a pretty satisfying one for me. And I basically say that because I was able to pursue interests within the Air Force that ultimately have served me well since I retired in 1986. One of the things that I really chuckle about in terms of talking about being retired is, and being in the Air Force, I'll always get the question, did you fly? Well, no, I didn't. I happened to wash out of pilot training. But today is a particularly difficult day for me because, having washed out of pilot training, I'd been in it for almost 5 months. I'd really developed relationships with my classmates. 8 of them are on the wall. And this day is always a tough one for me. Used to share spaghetti and meatballs with them and have a great old time, get drunk at happy hour and all that sort of stuff. And they're gone. My misfortune in terms of washing out ended up being, a silver lining for me in terms of I'm still here. And that's something that I deal with quite a bit, even today, having been out of the Air Force now for 35 years. People often ask, what did you do in the Air Force? And I had two avenues of experiences. One was operational. Most people think about the period between 1966 and 1975 as the Vietnam War years. There was another war going on. It was called the Cold War. It started in 1947 and ended in 1991 with the breakup of the Soviet Union. I was an integral part of that in terms of the air defense role that I played. Went to remote areas and had hardship tours and sat at radar scopes, sometimes 24/7, having cots right alongside us, depending on what the theater of operation was. The other part of my career is one that people are absolutely baffled about when I tell them what I did. I was a human relations officer in the Air Force. In 1971, I was tapped to go to the Defense Race Relations Institute. It still exists. It's now called the Equal Opportunity Management Institute. The mission then was to confront all of the racial strife that was existing in the military at that point in time. If you look at the history, the civilian history, 68 through 73, it was a really, really terrible time. And the military had to address that. I spent a great deal of time in that. And that proved to be very, very beneficial when I made my transition out. I did a lot of group sensitivity training. And ultimately, when I went on to get my clinical degree in marriage and family therapy at Syracuse, New York, it was just stepping off the curb in terms of being able to work with families. I've been working with groups for so many years. I too had difficulty with questions about, well, what the hell is a lieutenant colonel from the United States Air Force doing in a marriage and family therapy program? And it was challenging. But in all honesty, the transition was one that was fairly seamless. I was ready to do it at the time. Both my wife and I had certainly sat down and made these kinds of decisions. In terms of my Air Force experience, I look at my Air Force experience as pretty much a cakewalk. When I hear about the guys who were over in Nam or have been deployed, I'm always humbled in their presence. I never saw military. I never saw any conflict. Never went to war in that regard. And I remain very, very much humbled when I'm in the presence of those who have. I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Tony. And I appreciate you mentioning that this is a hard day for you. And I think it's important for us to remember that, you know, Veterans Day can be hard. 9/11 is certainly a hard day. And, you know, Memorial Day can be a hard day. And I think that's really important for us to be very sensitive to that. So thank you for sharing that. And now we're ready to move on to our second question. I'm a little sad for the audience that they don't get to hear your back and forth. So hopefully at the end, we have some time for them to hear your back and forth, because that's one of the best parts about us doing this work together. So our next question, Brent, Sharon, we will start with you, Sharon. How are you impacted by the withdrawal from Afghanistan or anti-military sentiment?
I think for myself, I tried to stay out of the political side of it, because whoever our president was, we were supporting him. We want to make sure the mission gets done. So for me, I just stuck with the mission. So even just recently, when Afghanistan, when everybody pulled out there, I really focused on the members that were under us. So in Rockland County, we have a vet-to-vet program, and I was concerned about those that have gone downrange, that have been in Afghanistan, that have lost people in Afghanistan. That's who I was concerned about. They had real, hurt that was there. You know, they put, almost 20 years. If you were in long enough, you probably had 4 or 5 deployments to Afghanistan and Iraq. And so that was my main mission. As long as I keep my face in the mission, I do well. You know, if I don't have a mission, that's a problem. So we just took care of the veterans that are in our area, and take care of those who take care of the veterans. So that was my thing. And I was concerned when we first went into Afghanistan, when it all started out. And I believe that Colin Powell would have kept us out of a situation that would have turned into Vietnam. And I think he disappointed us, and I think he disappointed himself in what he saw after so many years of what we got ourselves into and could not get ourselves out of. And that's what we had, in my opinion.
I think that you said some really important things there. I know that in my work with veterans, I learned that any major military operation that has veterans questioning, why were we there? Why did my friend have to die, or my friends have to die? You're always in that precarious situation that you're needing to check in on those veterans and making sure that they feel supported. And then I think the second part is that mission and purpose. Like keeping that mission and purpose is so central.
Because that's the only thing that I can really control, right?
Yeah, that's good. It's powerful. And Brent, same question. How are you impacted by the withdrawal from Afghanistan or anti-military sentiment?
Well, we actually just put it on a Afghanistan symposium about a week or 2 ago, and we got some people together from who work in the community, like Northwell Health, which is a big hospital system in Long Island, and we got someone from the VA to kind of talk about what the impact was that they were seeing, and we had an Afghan veteran himself come in and personally I'm a little distraught about the life that was lost. But I try to put my focus, as Sharon said, on kind of like how I can help the situation, how I can help my brothers and sisters who really were like in the thick of it, because I was home, you know. And so that's basically where our focus is. That's what the symposium was about, to kind of you know, we wanted to talk about it. We wanted to hear from different points of view what people experienced, what people saw, and it was a pretty common thing that we kind of heard, you know, and that veterans are, you know, I mean, the veterans are a little confused. Some are upset, and they're hurting, you know, and so I'm affected, and I'm moved to just to be available to help.
Just like sharing that mission and purpose and that peer support.
Yes.
Thank you, Brent. And Shermatz. Same question.
Same question. I'm in a similar boat as Sharon and Brent. It's not that I'm able to, it's not that I'm avoiding it. It's that I feel the role that I serve within what's happening right now in terms of how people are reacting to this is to be supportive of those people that are triggered and impacted by this. Like I don't have to, as a combat veteran who served in the Middle East, just by virtue of the fact that I was there, say that this does something to me, because I've been out of the military for since I got out in 2011, right? Like I got some time, right? So the politics of it don't necessarily bother me. What bothers me is the fact that service members, veterans that are more recently transitioning are being significantly impacted by this. And what I can do is bring myself to my profession every day and say, if you need me, I can share space with you to talk about this, even though it's unbelievably uncomfortable for you and it might be very charged. We need to have these conversations. If you withhold your feelings and your experiences that you're having with these things, years down the road, they're going to just bubble up in other ways that are going to be unhealthy and maladaptive and be causing you problems, right? I want to be able to facilitate conversations around this, where in a lot of social situations, you can't converse because it's just going to be arguing or fighting, because there's so much separation within, you know, our society these days. And where I stand on this is, we need to look at this. I don't want to say we need to, where I feel I'm looking at this is about humanity, and everybody's a human being. And there are a lot of people doing a lot of things to try to preserve life. And that's where I'm putting my focus, is that people are doing things to try to help other people. And that's me putting my energy into something that I feel is positive, and not letting other people who are more reactive in a negative way change my ability to show up daily and sit in a space where I can allow people to share their experiences with that. I don't know if I'm like being clear. I feel like I might be kind of like convoluted in what I'm saying, but like, I had such a bad experience leaving the military that I want to be able to create a space for people to talk about things that are uncomfortable for them, because I didn't feel like I had that space when I left. And now that I know it's there, I want to encourage people to talk about the things that they feel have, you know, just ripped into their soul, right? They need to let their soul be heard. And I think a lot of people are struggling just in how things have been handled or what the reaction is from people that don't have all the information. Because let's be honest, right? Like people that are making judgments and forming opinions are doing it based on very polarized media sources. They weren't there. They don't know. They're just picking a side. And that's unfortunate because that causes conflict. That doesn't cause debate, conversation. And that's kind of where I want to be. I want to encourage debate, conversation, connection, humanity, because we're all people first and foremost. Before we put any other title or label on ourselves, we're all human beings first. And we share that in common, whether we want to recognize it or not.
I think your answer was very clear. And I think one of the things that you did is what Amelia and I noticed about the Veterans Advisory Committee is you all have worked together over 2 years together now, and you don't agree on everything, but you're able to engage in critical discourse in a way that we see very few groups be able to do. And we use you as an example all the time at NASW as a group who is able to just engage in this discourse that's hard, you don't agree, and be able to come to a solution based on mutual respect for each other. And I think your answer just reflected that.
Sam, I know we don't want to stray, but can I say something or point out something, right? Like, I just want to give everybody that's attending an example, right? Like, I am very much an advocate and a proponent and a clinician that works in the area of moral injury. And Carl, we've had discussions. You don't see it the same way I do. I don't respect you an ounce less for telling me that you feel differently than I do about that particular area of service. I appreciate the fact that you show up and you are honest and you are genuine and sincere about it. You've never been disrespectful. We don't see it the same way. So what? Right? Like, we can still shake hands and give each other a hug at the end of the day. We don't have to be enemies. You know, it's just we see the world through two different sets of eyes, like every other person on the entire planet does. So sorry, I didn't want to take this away, but it was just an example of that. Like, it's okay to disagree.
Yes, and that's you. This group is such a picture of being able to engage in that critical discourse and have that mutual respect. And sometimes it's agree to disagree and coming to a place where we all work together. So I really appreciate that answer. And Venetia, now to you, how are you impacted by the withdrawal from Afghanistan or anti-military sentiment?
So I was personally affected. I was out in 2013, but I didn't know I would be triggered by this until it happened. So I didn't realize that my feelings ran so deep. I was there in 2011, but it's still pretty fresh. It's and when I saw what happened, there was a bunch of different emotions. Hurt, anger, scared, embarrassed, surprised, disappointed, a lot of different emotions. But the ones that stood out the most prominent ones to me was a lot of hurt. And as some of the panelists already described, it was, why was I there? Was, why is this the outcome? What was my purpose there? We fought so hard, we were in danger, we were around, there were people who died. Why were we there? Why did we make this sacrifice to be there? And this is the outcome. So I was personally affected. And then I had an encounter with someone who was talking about it, all the media coverage that was happening. And I got a knot in the back of my throat, my stomach. I just felt uncomfortable. I had all these different psychological symptoms going through my body. And I went into my supervisor's office and I kind of digressed. And I mean, he was very supportive, but I honestly did not think that I would be triggered by this. I've been avoiding the news because, again, it's very media driven. So I've avoided watching the news. I remember driving one day prior to doing that. And I was just crying in my car. I was just so emotional about it. So it's been hard. It was very hard for me until I kind of try to protect myself from all of the outside influences and just kind of sought support from others. So
I really appreciate your honest answer there, Vinicia, and it doesn't surprise me at all that you were deeply impacted. You were there. How could you not be? And it may feel like, after 10 years or something, you wouldn't be, but I don't know how you, I mean, of course you were impacted. You were there. You walked that ground. So I really, really appreciate you letting us know where you're at and like how this is impacting you and probably still impacting you.
oh yeah, I heard everybody talk and I'm like really uncomfortable. Like it's been hard listening to everybody and yeah, very emotional about it.
As you should be. And I think, we all have you. Like,
Absolutely.
Everyone here has you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Yep.
Carl.
I just want to say, Mike, thanks for your remarks. I know we have an moral injury difference of opinion, and maybe we can have a panel about that one time. My view is completely different from everybody so far. It was a gut punch for me. Absolutely, I relived the fall of Saigon. It was absolutely terrible. I have an incident that happened to me in Vietnam in 1969 that on a regular basis goes through my head. It's either sometime during the day, it'll flash in my mind. Sometimes it's just like on a newsreel over and over and over again, this one incident. Since what happened in Afghanistan, it goes through my mind even more. I used that as part of I spoke in 3 different places today, and I used that, I actually told the story, and it has never been this vivid in my mind since the event happened. And it just hit me hard. We actually at our vet to vet group, we decided to have a panel, an in-person and online panel about this, about, I guess it was about a month, no, about 3 weeks later it happened. Everybody in attendance was a Vietnam veteran. We did not have one new veteran there. It was all Vietnam veterans that were there. And they were all pretty much busted up over this. So, I took, as a Vietnam veteran, one of the things that we wanted to make sure of is that the new generation of veterans were treated decently. We wanted to make sure of that. And I know it wasn't our fault, but it feels like we left them down with what happened. And I know that's irrational, but I can't help that. That's how I feel. And I just want to share one more thing. And it's because Sharon mentioned Colin Powell, and he was in the same unit I was in Vietnam. We may have overlapped a few weeks in country, but I used this quote today, and I think this is something that we should all think about and use this quote. He said, now the quote just went right out of my head. I'm completely blank. I have had a senior moment. I am very sorry. I will try and find a quote, before I'm, I can't even think of the quote right now. I will look it up while and I will have it for the next thing, but it's a great quote. I use it all today and now I can't remember it.
Okay, we're totally holding you to that. I think it's the perfect way to end your talk there.
Sorry about that. Okay, thank you.
Don't be sorry, Carl. And I think you make such a good point here. And I know I'm the only civilian right now on this panel, but having worked with veterans and a lot of you for years, you know, what I've learned is there's so few people and so few Americans who've experienced war, have been in country in war. And so hearing you talk about how that, and I knew that it impacted you. I knew that Afghanistan impacted you and other Vietnam vets in a very powerful way. But it, you know, again, I can kind of see that. Of course it did. Of course it did impact you. Just like I think future things will impact, you know, our newer veterans as well, because it's that shared experience of war, being there at that moment. So I think that's a powerful thing for you to talk about, is that even after, you know, since 1969, the impact that had on you. And Alyssa, you are next.
I mean, it was impacted, but not, I think, at the same level. And I know the comparison game is not something that we should do, because I tell my people, don't do that. When I was deployed, I was not in Afghanistan, so I don't have the same shared experience that my colleagues who were there do. When I was deployed, I was in Bahrain, so I was in the area of responsibility milieu, if you will. And I mean, I remember when the news broke with everything. It was that Saturday in August, and I happened to be literally going on vacation, not going anywhere, but I was on vacation the whole following week. And I can remember my first thoughts were, oh my God, like this is Vietnam all over again. Even just seeing the Chinook, anyway, sorry, I don't want to trigger anybody, but like, I'm just like, and my instant worry was every single person on my caseload, even people that were not actively on my caseload, were people who were just like, I picked the wrong week to go on vacation. But at the same time, how do you can't say to the government, hey, when's a good week to go, when I'm not going to have to worry about people being triggered by things you're going to do, you know, things like that. So there's some of that, but like Venetia, I avoid the news with it, because there's just a lot that comes with it for me. I can remember running with some of my girlfriends earlier, or a couple days later, having a couple days to kind of process. And they were talking about it from a very different perspective, not, you know, just without some of the understanding of military culture and things like that. And one of them just happened to say, well, you know, does it bother you? You know, do you feel like your service is wasted, or that you didn't do what you were supposed to do, or anything like that? And I ran for a little bit and kind of thought about my response, and I said, you know what, I don't feel like my service was invalidated, because when I deployed, I had a mission and I did my job, and I did what I was supposed to do. My mission now is to take care of my people. My mission now is to make sure that these conversations happen and that people have an understanding of the impact on what this means. Because there can be well-meaning comments from folks who don't have a flipping clue. And it's my mission now to make sure that we are helping people understand what that means. And I don't believe anybody means it maliciously. There are some who do. That's a whole other conversation. But, you know, so there's that for me. I mean, some of what clinically comes up for me, or came up for me, was all of the trauma processing that I have done with veterans who were there, and the things that they witnessed, and just the images. And then just knowing, you know, as I'm reading news stories and reading between the lines of the news stories that I did choose to read, and then recognizing for myself, all right, I need to walk away from the news. I need to not read this article. I need to not get engaged in Facebook fights with people who may not have an understanding, but I need to be checking in on my folks to say, hey, how you doing? And there are a few that I texted back channel. I'm like, hey, just checking in, making sure you're, you know, how you doing? And when I came back from vacation, I think I have a little Vietnam veteran group that I run since I started, or I've taken back when I started at the VA. And 3 of them will log in every other week and do a Zoom, it's our video chat group, whatever. And I was so worried about them. I'm so worried because of all of just the triggers that, and they've already been triggered anyway. And so we logged on, and the first question that the first thing they started with was, how are you? And I'm like, how am I? I'm okay. Should I not be okay? Like, and they're like, we want to make sure you are okay because you always are taking care of us. And we want to make sure you are okay. And I'm like, and I'm just like, oh, my boys, my guys, my crusty Eeyores. It's what I call them. They're my crusty Eeyores. Because they are. And they're my favorite little group. I love them. They're not supposed to have favorites. I know, don't tell anybody I said that. But like, they were so worried. And we spent a lot of time processing all of that in that group, and it was phenomenal. And the one thing that I assured them, I said, I want you to hear me say, there are people, there is a tribe. I am making sure your experiences are not in vain, and that we are not leaving anybody behind. And I appreciate your commitment to making sure none of us feel that way in my era of service. We are carrying the torch for you because that is what we do. It's not okay, mission's done. The mission doesn't end. Does that make sense? I mean, it just, volume 3, I mean, or 1412. I mean, I don't know. I don't even know what volume we're on anymore, but like it's that, and it is what this panel does. It is what this group does. It is what this program does. It is what this is how we are carrying that mission, because it's not in vain. And so, Carl, your experience is not in vain, and we've got you. And if your senior moment has righted itself and you have the quote, you can feel free to unmute or something and come on in. Because I have senior moments and I'm not there yet, but I'm there. But
I did look up the quote, and it was from General Powell, is don't count your days, make your days count. And I think that's something that we should all live by.
Amen. Amen to that. Absolutely. So, but it's, I mean, so that's that. And clinically, there can be people that have, anti-military sentiment against women being in the military. And that's real. There's a lot of, and I know last October we had a whole women veteran panel. But there can be a lot of that. Like, well, if women weren't in the military, we'd get more stuff done. Okay, those are fighting words. But there can be a lot of that. And even as a social worker, the Navy had social workers. Yeah. Do you know how many problems there are? Come on now. Hello. Do you think that they only had that many? Yeah. How come there's not more? Well, that's a whole other different conversation to have. But anyway, I digress rapidly. But I think there can be just a lot of, anti-military sentiment that folks can get tripped up over. And it's not engaging in the political discourse that is real. Because as Sharon said, whoever is president is our commander in chief. And you don't have to like it, but you have to follow it. And that's that. And I try to keep that going. And I can now choose what I watch and read, and not that I couldn't do that before, but it's just, yeah. Anyway, I'm getting tangential, so I'm going to mute myself because Ward, you need to save me. That's just how that's going to happen. Between Ward and Tony, someone save me. That's just how that needs to go.
You did great, Alyssa. And Varmette is actually next.
My bad, shipmate. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I'm still good. I think I'll take the easy one first, which is the anti-military sentiment. I don't know. I mean, there's always somebody that was anti-military or something. To me, I did my job because they're able to express that expression. So defending that Constitution, when we take our oath and everything else. So, I mean, I'm not gonna, the thing is being mature enough, you walk away, you don't bother with them. I mean, if they don't like military, you just walk away. It definitely won't be drinking buddies with me, So that's common sense in the way it goes. Now, shifting to Afghanistan, that's a little different. Nothing political. Our political leadership, throughout my time frame has always changed between parties. So, at the end of the Vietnam, after I came in, Beirut, we lost 238 in the barracks bombing. I mean, that was a tactical fiasco, strategic fiasco there. You don't lose that many lives with it. I mean, then you go to Somalia. I was in Somalia. What did we do there? We lost, Army Rangers and things there. Then, Afghanistan, we lost them. My thing, even though it's triggered a couple of the nerves in my teeth as if they're raw, because I did have a lot of people that I have close relationships with that are over there, and some of them made it, some of them didn't. We were there for a purpose, and that purpose now is being reborn, but we accomplished our mission, and that's what I would tell other veterans. We accomplished our mission. So you can't help what policies and other things have done. It's like why we get ourselves into this, prolonged war is besides me. I don't know. There's a lot of smarter people who discuss it. It is hard when you go over there and it's part of your life, and that now has been, it's almost like incoming, where it shreds, the shrapnel shreds a lot and you can feel it, and raw nerves are exposed. And it's one of those things where I don't trust people anymore because I don't want to sit there, because I was an Afghan vet, and they don't know my feelings, and I don't want to hear somebody say, get over it, move on. Again, as I'm digesting all this, we're still going through, and I'm still trying to mature, trying to be a big person about it. But, we take the innocent people, and when I say the innocent, I'm talking the 18, 19-year-old, some of them 17, who snuck in, who have life, they got longer lives than I do at this point. So, we take them and we put them in situations that, that are so grown up. Should I shoot this person and take a life, or should I do this? And they go through this, and they know some of the bad things that are there. And there's some very bad people there. Don't get me wrong. It's just, it's just hard to say, but yet coming from ours, it'd be nice if they would lay down their weapons and we could all come to the table and talk and settle it in a peaceful manner. That doesn't always work. So sometimes you have to use force, and that's where, we get involved, and that's due to, all else has failed with negotiations and diplomacy. So for us being part of the system, it shouldn't be directed, the hate or anything else should be directed at us. It needs to go somewhere else, and the right questions asked and the right debates done, versus us that are right there. A lot of the, and I call them kids, don't get me wrong, and I mean no insult to any of them, but as I was getting older, they kept getting younger, And I was like, geez, I hope this kid doesn't step on a mine. I hope he doesn't, you know, keep an eye out. You better get down because this isn't the movies, you know. And I was putting good, you know, 4-letter words in front of that, because it is a serious situation. And it was something that I just didn't expect to happen so quick, so violently. And then the not taking care of ourselves while we're there. I mean, that, come on, that I just don't agree with that, because, and that's going to cause a lot of people, because we're always telling everybody, protect yourself, protect it. Why do you think you have the training? Why do you have this? Why do you have that? So when something like this happens, you know, it's going to open wounds, and it has opened wounds. And I'm trying to be nice about some things, but I don't really care who. The president is still the president, and he gets my respect no matter from Beirut all the way through. What was it? 5 different presidents. So, you know, they're still the commander in chief. But, you know, some people need to understand there's kids at the end of that line. And when they make a decision, there's real life and death decisions at the end of that. So I guess I don't know where I'm going with this. So I'll get off on it.
I think that was very well said, Mike. I think that was very well said, you know, especially from someone who was there. And, you know, it's a different perspective. And Ward, you are next. And I believe you're going to answer the question I posed, but also a question that came up in the Q&A.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. I'll certainly give it a shot if you can hear me okay. I remember struggling being in Afghanistan in 2004, 5, and 6, and thinking this doesn't seem really winnable, in that, you know, wars by definition rarely are, you know, at least in our thinking. But this was an asymmetrical war where we were, you know, completely advanced in technology, but behind in maybe the values that the Afghans really held dear. I think the most common amount of education in Afghanistan was 1st grade. And we were working with about 700 or 800 detainees that had been captured, and every one of them was a sheep herder or raised wheat. And that was their lives. And we were kind of violating our own principles with, you know, taking these people away from their homes for a year and a half. People were dying that they loved back home, and violating basic rights of habeas corpus. And the whole time I'm thinking, what are we doing here? Are we supposed to be rescuing them from poverty, improving their quality of life, Americanizing them? So somebody was asking a really great question, Robert Brown, about, you know, how to feel about the total collapse of the military that we had propped up. I'm not sure it was even there in the first place. We really were the strongest players on the board, and as soon as that's gone, it's back to chaos. When people were talking about going into Afghanistan really early, right after 9/11, the line was, you can make the rubble bounce, meaning it's not going to be much different afterwards. And sadly, I think it went from being maybe the poorest country in the world to the 4th poorest during our time there. And in the end result was, it's probably going to go back. Another line, speaking of, you know, trying to quote Colin Powell, which is a powerful man, and someone I really I'm sorry to have lost, is that you can't give somebody freedom. Freedom has to be earned, and has to be fought for and won, arguably. And in Afghanistan, it never was. So my only hope is, as everybody left and it went back into sort of chaos, is that maybe those who are at the bad end of it can do something to win the freedom they had for 20 years. Hopefully there'll be some positive outcomes in the end. I wish I could be optimistic, though.
I think that was a really good explanation, Ward. I've never heard it like explained like that, about, like, you know, who you were training and like what was going on with them while you were training them. I think that was a really good explanation.
Thank you, Sam.
And Tony. Tony, you're on mute.
There we go. Okay. history's really been remarkable in terms of the Vietnam era and post-Vietnam era, as far as acceptance of the military and approval and now. I mean, it's really been a very, very positive journey in that regard as far as the civilian world is concerned. I think that's a wonderful thing. It's really, really great to go through an airport and see young men and women in their uniforms. Once upon a time, we were told to stop doing that. I mean, that's part of our history way back when. And those days are gone, and that's terrific. With regard to the messy evacuation, I came across an article that I thought really was just extremely touching. It was by the commander of some of the 13 that were killed. They were supposed to have been relieved an hour before the bomb went off. They had radioed back to their headquarters. Hey, we got this for another hour. Let the other guys get, take some time, get some more rest. That says a lot about, what the tribe is all about, and watching each other sick. I think that was really, really touching. The other thing that troubles me about what happened was, yeah, we lost 13, and I don't know how many other, 30 something other wounded. A messy withdrawal plan was absolutely bonkers. It was really crazy. But in the meantime, in the history of aviation, there's never been an airlift to the extent of the one that we pulled off in Afghanistan. We evacuated 120,000 people. We didn't lose a single aircraft. Those C-17s were airborne, and we had 30 to 40% of our aircraft airborne 24/7 in support of this mission. I think about the pilots and the crews and the maintenance folks that just kept on trucking in spite of the mess. And I tend not to compare it with Vietnam because of that. There's clearly a positive piece to that, in spite of the mess that clearly was a 24-hour news cycle, presented 24-hour news cycle. I think we in the military, those on active duty and those in service, really have an obligation to make sure that what we do and how we perform, whether we're veterans or still on active duty, continue to support or continue to feed the support that we get from the civilian world. I think that's absolutely essential. I'll stop there.
Thank you, Tony. And thank you everyone for answering that difficult question and doing what you do, which is engaging in that discourse to teach other people and to teach them about military culture and about how you process things. We have one last question. I just want to let the audience know that we will stay on till we finish our question. If you have to go, don't worry. We are recording this. I've seen a lot of comments of everyone appreciating you and appreciating this discussion. So we will release the video, of course, so you can see anything that you may miss. So we are back to Sharon. And for our last question, no matter how long you've been out of the military, what are some of your successes and challenges while you're still integrating into civilian culture?
I don't even know. I'm so old now. It's just, that's just life. I was thinking initially, I said maybe the uniform, but I'm like, yeah, well, I have to take it off at some point. But I think in that vein, it's being around a bunch of passionate people who would give their lives to make sure the mission is accomplished. And there's nothing, no job that has ever compared to that. And even being as a social worker, I've never been in anything like that. I've never been around a bunch of people that way. And just like we've talked about earlier, and we don't even know each other, and we would do it. You know, we would take the other person's turn if that's the case. I remember, you know, when I was in, and 9/11 happened, and I knew one of my social worker colleagues had a wife that had cancer, and I volunteered for him. And he really felt like, oh, I can do this, because it was before we got any orders anywhere. And I saw what the handwriting on the wall, and I did that, you know, whatever we could do to take care of somebody else, as well as volunteer for anything else. We knew what we were going to go into, and we would volunteer for that. So there's a bunch of people that make those kinds of commitments. That's what I miss the most.
I love that. Again, bringing it back to the culture, and that you are a collective culture and you put others before yourself. And that's part of the mission, is to make sure you're protecting the others. Great answer as always, Sharon. And Brent, what are some of your successes and challenges with integrating into civilian culture?
I think one of my biggest successes is becoming aware that a part of who I am, right? I was a civilian first, right? But when I went into the military, and when I came home, you know, that experience, part of who I am is military. I'm a veteran today, and I identify with that. And I didn't know how deeply rooted it was for a while. And so that was one of my successes, to be able to know that, to acknowledge it, and then connect to it, because it just made my life so much more easier. Because I was looking for something. I was looking, like I said earlier, that camaraderie, and I found it in my job. And so one of my challenges is that I got a promotion, right? I mean, I hope this doesn't sound depressing, but I got a promotion, right? This is a good thing, right? But the promotion has moved me away from my veterans department somewhat. So so to me, that's a challenge. Like, that's my joy, that's my heart, that's where I really want to be, you know. And so it's a little bit challenging to not be able to spend as much time you know, with my brothers and my sisters, and, you know, putting on these different events and creating groups. I had to kind of turn the mantle over to Audrey Lewis, who's my program manager, and by the way, she does a great job. I don't know, it was hard to let it go, you know what I'm saying? But and so when I am able to connect, it feels great. We did a weekend retreat, which is something that we do yearly. Obviously, COVID slowed us up last year, but we did it this year. And so I was all into it, and I went out there, and then at the end of it, we all talked about what it meant to us. And the people who came said some things that really like touched my heart, and it just that was everything for me. It's kind of like what I live for. You know what I mean? As a social worker too, I identify as a social worker as well. And being able to help people put pieces back together is everything to me. And so that's part of my success. And then just to sum all of that up, is to be a part of this team that I met in Fort Jackson, South Carolina, who are all different now, but we're all the same. That's success for me.
Do I need to call McQueen and get onto him for doing you dirty and giving you a promotion?
No, don't tell him I want the promotion. It's okay though.
But we're glad that you're still with us and getting to work with your veterans here.
Need to be here. I need to be here.
Thank you, Brent. And Shermatz,
Same question.
same question.
My success and challenge is the same thing, is that I'm still here and I'm still doing what I'm doing and I'm still living, you know, like Matthew McConaughey said in Dazed and Confused, LIVIN, just keep on living. Right? Like, it's a success that I'm still showing up every day to my life, despite all the things that I could use as excuses to check out, right? And I'm not saying like check out of like being alive, but just check out of like being a part of a community, being a part of the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative, being a part of a profession that I'm proud of, being a part of friendships that I have, being a part of a family that I'm a part of. Like, I could check out of all of that, right? If I choose to, I have choice. Every day I wake up and I have choice. And so that's a success. And that's also a struggle, because I can choose to do things that don't serve what I value and what's important to me and what brings happiness to my life and what makes me a healthier person. And I'm not saying I make all the right choices, but I know moment to moment that I have the ability to choose how I engage in this world. And I try to balance that. I try to keep that in balance, because I think that's what I think that's what I struggled with before. I chose too much in one direction and not enough in the other to keep myself balanced and on plane and connected with what was important to me, right? And we're all people, and I'm like, you probably heard this, like this thread from me is that like we're more, and Brent, I don't know if I think you said it, we're more alike than we are different, right? Like we have bad days, right? Like we all struggle. That's normal. That's not anything unique to being a veteran, right? Like some days you just wake up on the wrong side of the bed. And I choose to lean into the things that allow me to be more connected with myself and other people. And I didn't used to do that. And so that's a success. It doesn't make it easy, but I know that I have the ability to make that choice. And I'm just very grateful to the people that have been a part of the journey that I've been through coming home, that have allowed me to reconnect with that ability to choose in my own life how I'm going to live. And I'm going to continue to embrace that every day. Some days it's not going to go as well, but I'm going to embrace those with compassion towards myself and the world, and lean into love and not hate, because I don't have the capacity for that anymore. It doesn't serve me. And part of what I want to serve is people that are struggling with that realization that they still have the ability to choose in their life. And I want to be a part of that.
Thank you, Mike. I knew when you answered, it's the same answer for both. It was going to be a really good answer. Strong thinking there. All right, Venetia, what are some of your successes and challenges?
So my challenge, I'm going to start with my challenges, and which will segue into my successes. So for me, my biggest challenge is being able to trust people. As I mentioned earlier, it's always been a struggle for me. I tend to trust veterans. If you're a veteran, I'm open-hearted, open arms. Not if you have a connection to a veteran or you are familiar with, you have a son or a daughter, I tend to navigate towards those individuals, but I'm very aware of that. And I'm definitely working on that. Currently in my job, I don't work specifically with veterans anymore, and I still, it's my passion, and that's what I want to do, but I get it here. I get it through the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative, through the camaraderie that we have here. And that's able to give me that urge that I'm looking for. Another success is working on my MSW. Since I got out of the military, I have tried to figure out what my path is. I've done various things. I got a master's in psychology. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. And here I am, finding my niche. This is what I want to do. I want to help people. I want to advocate for others, those who don't have a voice. That's what I want to do. I'm so passionate about that. And whether it's with veterans or not, I'm still dedicated to those individuals. I'd rather be a veteran because I guess I'm a little bit biased, but but I know that's what I want to do. And also the Dwyer program. I mean, just being part of that and being connected with veterans and being able to steer them in the right direction, or, you know, being able to educate them on things that they didn't even know that they were eligible for. I think in one of those veterans' lives, I've made a difference. So that's what I consider my successes. It's been an amazing ride from the time that I got out.
Well, I know for a fact you made a difference in way more than one veteran's life. You were the one who got Broome County up and running there with the Dwyer program and kept it running for a long time. So yeah, I think you've been very successful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Venetia. And Carl, what are some of your successes and challenges?
One of the successes is staying awake today, but that's probably not what you're looking at. I'm sitting here dozing, fighting not to fall asleep again. That comes with age. Tony probably will understand that as much as any of us. I think for me, obviously the challenges were the way we were treated when I got out of Vietnam, but I don't want to dwell on that because I got past that. I think my biggest success is that I'm still helping and working for veterans. I have veterans come in every day that had to put in a claim for it to get compensation from the VA, that have some health issue, whether it's mental or physical. And I get to help these veterans every single day. And they come back and they, you know, when they thank me, that's, you know, they're thanking me for doing something that I love to do. And as I pointed out very early in the comments, I'm not a social worker. Not there's anything wrong with being a social worker, but I'm not one. And I would have to say, and to be perfectly honest with you, my biggest challenge is that I've gone since I got out of the service without punching a hippie. And that's been very difficult for me. I would really like to do that, and I have not. And I'm just going to close with one thing. I say this every Veterans Day, what I do when I go home, and some of the people listening may not know this, some of you guys may not know this, but I come home and I will do that after we finish here. I will get my VCR out, and I have Jane Fonda's exercise tape. And I put Jane Fonda's exercise tape in, and I put it on fast forward, hoping that she will have a heart attack. She never has, but that's how I end my Veterans Day every year. And with that, I will yield to the next speaker.
Carl,
oh my God, I don't even know how I can like follow that, other than just, I'm awake too, and it's been a long day, so I totally feel that. And oh my God. Oh man, my brain went like 6 other places in there. I mean, my bucket list looks a little different than Carl's, but I'm all for supporting Carl's bucket list, because if that'll help give him some resolution to move forward, spot on. Although don't break out in silver bracelets, because those don't match shoes. They just don't go with anything. Don't listen to the fashion people. No, those, anyway, sorry. just where my brain is at. Silver bracelets don't match shoes. No. Okay. All right. Successes and challenges. I mean, there's a lot. Silver linings in how my journey ended with the military, but ultimately service is in my blood. It is how I'm wired. It is why I'm a social worker. It is why being in the military just fit. It is why when I was leaving the military, there was no other place I could conceptualize working at than at a VA, because it's my people. It's my hospital, my people. And, you know, there's lots of thought about VAs. I get it. I hear it. Trust me, I do. You've seen one VA, you truly have seen one VA, and that's legit. There's good and there's bad everywhere, but there's good and there's bad everywhere with everything else. You know, you get food poisoning at a McDonald's. Are you going to boycott the whole McDonald's? No, you just might avoid that one for a little bit. Anyway, so that's just a general, not trying to start anything at all in there, but just, you know, there's good and bad everywhere. I worked in the medical system a lot of years, and I've seen good and bad everywhere. It doesn't matter where you are. There's that. But some of, and I don't really know if it's a challenge or a success. And so I don't necessarily know how to frame this piece, but because service is how I'm wired, when people will say to me on my evaluations and whatnot, you know, you go the extra mile and you go above and beyond and whatever, like, to me, it's, you know, it feels weird. It feels weird to hear that, because again, it's how I'm wired to help. I'm wired to serve. I'm wired to not leave anybody behind. And I will give people on my caseload like 60 gazillion chances until I legit can't rationalize giving them another chance. Like, maybe not 60 gazillion, but so like, but successes and challenges are just in how I move through other areas of my life. How I connect with other moms, how I connect with other women in my community, you know, in how, and you know, the thought process that, you know, it's a first world emergency or a first world problem, like, is a very real statement within a veteran culture. And it's taken me some time to be like, okay, well, it's not necessarily my emergency, but it seems emergent for them. Although some of the things I scratch my head over, like, I don't understand, but I don't necessarily have to. But a first world problem is a real thing. Because even though you know, there are places in this world where those are not options for people, you know, like it's choosing between Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts is a first world problem. Like, it healthcare, clean water, that's a different thing. Like, there's, so, and I'm rambling and I'm tangential, and this is just what happens after hearing everybody talk and just trying to figure out how I follow Carl. I mean, I'm just gonna blame Carl right now, because he just completely derailed me with Jane Fonda. I'm just gonna go there. I'm just gonna do it. So that's just wow. But oh, see, there it goes. There it goes. See, right there in the comments. Oh, Sharon. Oh no, America runs on Duncan, sweetheart. It's okay. Anyway, and this is what Sam was just like. Anyway, so but there's like 3 people that still have to talk, and so I need to like not do this, but that's okay. And thank you, Shermatz, for helping to reframe my crazy brain. I appreciate that. But like, the successes and challenges are just that. And I don't think that there is an end point in integrating or reintegrating. You know, I am a veteran. I am a, you know, that is who I am. And that is just that, you know, it's honor, courage, and commitment. It's just who I am. and core values as a sailor, like that's it. I mean, Sam, you said earlier on, you give a veteran a task, and not only are we going to do it, we're going to write an SOP, and we're going to make sure like 16 other people behind us know how to do it right. And we're going to show up 15 minutes early, because then we're on time, we're not late. You know, like there's just all these bits and pieces that just make up who we are. And this work, this mission is my mission. It is all of our missions. And that's both a success and a challenge. You know, it's a challenge in how we keep it going. It's a challenge in how we're communicating that. And just, Carl, it's how we're not throat punching people. I mean, whatever your tricks are for doing that. And if someone tells me Starbucks is the answer, I don't know if that's going to work, but like, it's how we are just making sure that our people are seen and heard and understood, because the thought process that a veteran is what Hollywood defines us to be is just so far off the mark. It's just so far off the mark. And if you think you know what a veteran is based on a veteran you know in your life, then you have met a veteran in your life. And it is the same sentiment of ask what military service means to other veterans in your life and really listen. And that is a success and a challenge, you know, and it's, yeah. So now we've met, sir, it is over to you to try and make some sense of, I don't know, but just please don't say Starbucks. Please don't say Starbucks. Don't say Starbucks.
I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to keep it from the politics of it. You know how that is. Marines, you drink anything, you know, hey, give me some gas and I'll blaze it with some coffee and it'll be good enough for the field. So
that is a true story too, but that's
it is.
Story.
So
deployment coffee is its own special thing, but we'll just leave it at that.
Yep. I think the successes that I have is like, for instance, I've been a guest speaker at several places. One of the things, and I want to relay on to the audience, if you don't have a military background, do not be intimidated, because what you're here to do is learn versions of our culture to pick it up. And part of that is that you're going to have to pick up somewheres. I mean, anytime we go into a field that we're not familiar with, or a portion of our spectrum of social work, you have to be aware of who your clientele are. And that's what this is. I get a lot of people always coming back, just not, you know, saying, geez, I didn't go in. Who cares? You're there to help the vet deal with the situation they're in. And that's why you're there. I'm proud to talk to other people who weren't in the military. I mean, I enjoy that. A lot of my friends, a lot of my social worker counselors, licensed clinical social workers were not military. And I enjoy it so much because I do learn so much from them. It's learning from us. So I do see people sometimes saying, hey, you know, I wasn't in the military. Well, that's not the point. The point is that's the type of clientele that you have, that you're going to run across. Then there's this culture that comes behind them. It's as if somebody comes from a Latino background, and you're going to have to be aware of some of the Latino culture in order to deal with your client. The thing is that I keep veterans up here above Albany. We have an estimated 27,000 veterans. Okay, that's a little shy. I think there's another 10 to 12,000 more that aren't even registered with the VA. So that's been a big coordination meeting with where I've been working a lot of that issues. And when I'm dealing with it, I want to keep, you know, their perspective, the veterans, including my perspective, positive for me, for them, themselves, to keep it positive, because it's so easy to get down. I often tell them, don't even watch it. I don't even watch the news. I can't even stand it. Boy, if you want to get riled up, get on blood pressure medicine or something, just watch the news. I don't care who it is. It's the same thing over and over and over again. I didn't watch it for a month, and I still it was still when I did see it by mistake at a Starbucks, so, you know, on the TV. So, you know, it was the same thing that I thought it was a rerun, because it was the same stuff they had. My life is more important in the veteran's life. Your clients are more important. So, you know, just be aware of it. And when you're dealing with them, dealing with any veteran, they're a fascinating group. I think it's a fascinating culture. It keeps things together. And, you know, so I think that's one of my successes. The good thing is what I didn't admit to is the success about being part of all this and why I went into it. I think I was looking for a lot of self-healing too. So I don't know if it's better for me or better for my clients sometimes, because I certainly get a lot out of it when I do interact with veterans and other professionals within the mental health field. So, I mean, I couldn't have it better. I mean, nothing blew up around me. Nobody shot at me, and I didn't have to shoot at anybody. So it's a good day for me. So anyways, I'll turn that over to the next person.
Thank you, Mike. That would be Ward.
Sure, Sam, thanks. You know, it's a great question. It was originally, because it's diverted a bit, you know, what's the positives and negatives you took from the experience, right? And I would say just leadership experience and emphasis on organizational capacity and the ability to kind of drive harder and farther. And I wound up putting that into business over the years after, you know, many years in private practice. And it's been kind of useful and helpful. But just like Venetia said originally, it's been a lot of years. That's a long time ago. And you wind up kind of thinking back, it's just one phase of life. We all move on. That was like 7 lives ago. And in the end, it's nice just to know that people care about us as veterans and are willing to connect and be there and help. And, you know, really special thanks to anyone that's listening to this all through the day. And thanks for helping out with vets. And you certainly have no shortage of need.
Thank you, Ward. And Tony, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm sitting here trying to think of successes. I mean, I've been out of the military longer than I was in. It's been 35 years since I wore the uniform. I can honestly say for a while there, I'd compartmentalized all of those experiences. But then this program called VMHDI came along, and all of a sudden I had an awakening. Yeah, I am a veteran, and I have lots of positive experiences, and in some respects, I can really challenge some of the stereotypes that are out there about veterans in general. And I enjoy doing that. Certainly being a part of this group has been a real gift. I've really enjoyed it. I also find myself in working with the Citron Veterans Program, doing some consulting work with therapists who are engaging in working with veterans or have some interest in that. I'll continue to do that. That's about it at this point in time. I don't really feel like I have any grandiose or, you know, big kinds of goals in terms of where I want to go as far as my military career is concerned. I am retired from doing clinical work at this point, so I got a lot of time in my hands. And if there's anything that I can do to contribute more, I'm available. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Tony. And of course, a huge thanks to everyone. We do have one question, and then we will wrap up so Carl can go home and watch his video. So Robert asked, and Robert is such a great participant in a lot of our events here at NASW. Robert asked, he says, as a civilian puke, he took part in a military competency course on Monday, which augmented what was already in my skill set. What are the panel's thoughts on requiring more schools of social work to include military social work in their curriculum. So whoever wants to answer. Go ahead.
I think it's one of the best things to happen because, well, you have a longevity within a veteran, and a lot of the veterans are, you know, this very longevity of like anything else, but there is a longevity to it. But the issue is it never goes away. So back in World War II, the veterans that had combat and the PTSD and things of that nature, you know, it was called combat fatigue. It was, or something to the effect of Vietnam. It was called combat fatigue, I think, or something else. I forgot what it was offhand, but it was, yeah, shell shock was World War One.
Yeah, battle fatigue, war neurosis. Yeah,
And like that, but they go on. But then there's this aged population that we have of veterans, and there's little done on when they have the late adult trauma readmissions. There's little done on that. There's a lot of exposure to such things because medical social workers need to understand, you know, when you have an Agent Orange veteran coming in, these are not like 1-2 people. You're talking whole populations. So, you know, this is not where it's I'm going to learn this and then not do it again, because you are going to see it with a lot of veterans. They're reaching that age, and that's one of the most, where the most work is needed. And my experience has been the older the person gets, the less anybody really wants to do anything because they don't see hope at the end. And there's a lot of things that we could do as social workers to do life end work for the veteran versus sitting there, you know, telling it. And I see it a lot. I see a lot of discrimination against the aged veteran, and it's very, very hurtful. And I've probably have not, I probably have made people mad at some of my comments to them, but then again, I'm not apologizing either. So the point is that there's this whole spectrum that you could spend a lifetime on. And that's why I think it's important to know it, because it is a predominant group out there. And you know what? It's everything. It's everybody, every religion, every race, every, you know, you name it. It's everybody was in the military that was there. I mean, it's how do you not address such a even though they say only 1% served in the military, but then, you know, think about it. There's a big population, a cohort of veterans, and there's things that, you know, we didn't address back then, like MST. I mean, you know, what a mess that is, and I feel so bad for a lot of the, you know, military veterans that experience that. And I, you know, shame on our commanders, you know, I mean, I get that, but anyways, I'm going to go off on a high horse, and I don't want to do that, but that's why it's good to have that military culture, that kind of stuff for mental health workers, because it is a big part. Remember when they were developing, according to Erickson, they went from family, and their family became the military at that age of 18.
Yep.
So then it goes in, and now they have to, that's how they go back. That's why a lot of them that go back to their family at age 35 are adjusting well, because they're living in their parents' basement. Don't move them out. Let them adjust. That's just the way it is, you know? So anyways, that was just my 2 cents. Sorry, didn't mean to. I got all stirred up on Starbucks and Dunkin' Donuts and everything.
It's all good.
I want to comment. So we have the clinic I work in, it's a residential substance use clinic. And we have an intern who's currently in a school of social work. And I've spoken to her on many occasions doing like supervision after groups and individual sessions. And she's talked about how the school has moved in a direction that is so left-wing liberal that it's hard to have conversations that don't align with those beliefs that move in that radical of a direction. And to me, that's really unfortunate, because in academia, you would hope that that would be where we are molding our young, aspiring, budding clinicians to be able to lean into being able to have these discussions on topics that are inherently uncomfortable. That's what people struggle with. Like, that's a lot of what our clients struggle with, is that I don't feel comfortable talking about something that makes me uncomfortable. And then that's happening in academia, right? And just from her account, sharing this experientially. And then we come here, and this is real talk, right? Like in these panels and these continuing education opportunities, you know, and I'd love to see this be a part of a school of social work. And maybe we can get to that at some point, where there's a track, like one university in my area has like a focus in veteran and military families, right? And that's great. And at the same time, I think cultural competence like needs to be something that is like, you continue to follow that, because the landscape of what the military looks like is changing, like the landscape of the rest of the world continues to change. And we need to be aware of that, right? Like, we can't base how we treat our returning, you know, our transitioning veterans off of history books. It needs to be on what's happening now. And not to say that history doesn't inform us, but we also need to be dialed into the experience that people are having now. And I think that these type of programs, what the Veterans Mental Health Training Initiative can offer, is these candid conversations that really bring to light what this experience is like for people in the present moment, and not based in research. And I just really appreciate that. And I really appreciate that people want to show up and hear this.
Yes.
So I'll leave it there.
I mean, I agree. I think that having those conversations are critical. I mean, from a biopsychosocial perspective, like, that's it. Looking at the whole person in social work education, you have to be able to wrap that in and understand that. I mean, you've got veterans who have their post 9/11 GI Bill or some form of educational benefit, and they're coming back to school. And so you've got Venetia, who is, you know, girl, we're having a party when you graduate, because we are like, you know, Tony wants spaghetti and meatballs. We can totally do spaghetti and meatballs. We'll find, I don't know where, but we'll figure that out. But we've got, you know, we've got Mike, who both Mikes went back to school and got their MSWs, like coming in with experience and like a very different perspective than a 21-year-old kid. And I use that term because I was that person. You know, I mean, I got my bachelor's degree, I worked for 2 years, and then I went and got my master's degree. And I had some life experience. Nothing, I mean, and when I had classmates in my program who were literally on their second career because they had made their money in finance or this or that, or they had like 16 ulcers and they were just like, I can't do this, I need to do something different. And the value in listening to their life experience helped me conceptualize my educational learning, in how I worked with patients who were older, you know, or not older. I mean, I was 20, as a long time ago. I've been doing this work a long time. It doesn't feel like I've been doing this work as long as I have, but I have, and that's just a whatever. But it's when you have young veterans coming back, like, their brains are not developed before they experience some significant trauma. Like, they're still figuring life out, and then literally things are exploding and they're hitting their head on things that go boom, and it hurts. And That's just being very general with that. But how at 19 years old to be a squad leader and in charge of 10 people and keeping them alive, and then coming home and being told, oh, we'll just go work at Lowe's, they like veterans. No, like that just absolutely, like, and I appreciate businesses that do, I do, and that's not saying that, but to have that understanding within a community, within a culture, coming back, that's not seeing them, that's not hearing them, that's not understanding them. And that is what the VMHTI, initiative, it helps do. And the work that we've been able to do and the panels that we've been able to do, like, I mean, it's that. It's being real, it's being upfront, it's being honest. This is a veteran's experience. Hear us, see us, understand us. We talk about veteran suicide ad nauseum, and honest to God, like, you miss the mark if you're not asking about connections, you're not asking about purpose, if you're not asking about what drives you, if you're not trying to understand, but if you're tossing something at somebody, oh, well, you're in that population, you're at risk. Holy hell, like, don't, there needs to be that understanding and that conversation. And so whether it's at an educational level, at an academia level, that's a start, and that's a place to go. I mean, I know SUNY Albany has a military social work class. I think Farmette, you took that, right, when you were going through SUNY Albany. And I know I've had an intern who went through Walden and the military social work track, said it was phenomenal and was great. He's a veteran himself. And so when I have a veteran student who is a field person, my brain is not thinking of the right term. I was the field liaison, whatever, supervisor, for when he says to me, they did a really good job, like, knowing where he came from, that means something. And so I think that schools of social work, schools teaching mental health, regardless if it's social work, psychology, LMA, I don't even care, like mental health training, like that needs to be in there, because for anybody, first responders, you're learning how to do whatever, you come up upon a veteran, you best know how to do that, you best know how to handle that, because there can be veterans who will lay you out flat if you approach them wrong. Flat in 2 seconds. And if you don't know how to approach that, like, going to an emergency room, I worked in an emergency room for a number of years. And if a patient that I am evaluating in a crisis situation does not feel safe, they are not going to be real with me about what else is going on. Have a good night, Brent. Thank you so much for your beautiful music. And if we are approaching somebody wrong, we're going to get a very different diagnostic picture. And so learning how to do that is critical. So I'll stop talking because I can go on forever, as everybody knows. But
Thank you so much, Alyssa, and everyone who answered. And I just want to thank you all. We've had a few who had to leave. Carl said it was his bedtime. He needed to go watch his video, so he had to go home. But I just want to thank you all. You all know how much I enjoy working with you. And if you had a chance to read the comments, the audience very much enjoyed this panel tonight. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your Veterans Day evening.
Thank you, Sam. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam.
Bye.
We'll see you.
Bye.
Night, everybody.